Hello everyone, this is Sai Manjunath S, and today we'll look at manufacturing and make in India, mainly focusing on the struggles, challenges, and the trends and as we move forward. So, as we know, India is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, but its manufacturing sector has not kept up the pace over the last few years. So, despite having a high GDP growth, the manufacturing contributes only about 14 to 15% of the GDP when you compare it with China or Vietnam, which contributes like 25 to 30% of the overall GDP. This gap is at the heart of the Make in India campaign or the challenge that was undertaken by the government. So now let's look at what Make in India is. Make in India was launched like 11 years ago in 2014, which basically aimed to turn India into a global manufacturing hub and to create 100 million jobs by 2022. The target was 25% of GDP from manufacturing, and it targeted 25 sectors like defense, electronics, automobiles, and it was backed by reforms like FDI liberalization and simplified regulations. But in reality, despite the big promises, the progress has been limited. So the growth has been stagnant at around 5 to 17% across the years. So the current scenario over here is that the outputs have been improving in the last FY24 to 25. And as I mentioned earlier, there has been multiple schemes where the FDIs have supported the Make in India with relaxations and benefits. So let's look at the challenge part and what made this specific scheme struggle. So logistics cost and the infrastructure gap is one of the major reasons, as logistics cost are nearly like 14% of the GDP compared to like 8 to 9% in advanced economies like China or USA. So we have policy uncertainty. There is a chance of sudden changes in tax tariffs that reduces investor confidence. So there is a skill mismatch where we have a lot of young population which lacks manufacturing skills, and with high global competition like countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam, with lesser cost of production, it attracts supply chain more efficiently. So we'll also look at how the trends have been over the years. So there has been a positive trend with more companies willing to invest in India. For instance, Apple and Samsung are now Make in India, and the government has introduced PLI schemes, which is basically production-linked incentive schemes of worth over 2 lakh crores to attract more investments. But even though all these schemes are present, the manufacturing share of GDP has stuck around like 14%, where, as I mentioned earlier, the target was 25% when it was launched in 2014. So the manufacturing share of GDP is basically 14 to 16%, but why it matters is it missed the demographic dividends. And even though we have the Make in India scheme, it's more of assembled in India, where we are still reliant on the products being imported from the other developed countries, such as China, in case of mobile development. So this majority of India's growth has been led by services, which limits job creation for say unskilled workers, and also this has led to a jobless growth, which means that manufacturing creates a bulk of jobs. Even though we have a high GDP, the amount of jobs that we create across years has been very less. So we also have there is a need of global competitiveness, and that is why India has to say step up with its manufacturing and Make in India scheme. And there is also a potential for inclusive growth as we move forward. So, what are the way forward with this scenario? To overcome these challenges, India must invest in infrastructure, basically ports, powers, and logistics, which India has been doing over the years. So, it needs to have more balanced trade policies for this. And they need to be giving occasional training for youth, and there should be a stable policy environment where we should have lesser regulatory flip flops, and say there should not be a major change with regards to policies with manufacturing. So we have to integrate the supply chains, especially in electronics, electric vehicles, and defense, so that the value that comes out of it is very high, and the local value chain and MSME support will eventually improve. So, as we conclude, Make in India is definitely not a failure, but it has definitely underdelivered to its potential. But if it is implemented right, it can mean jobs, it can mean growth, and it can also mean global competitiveness. And the question that I would want to end with is, can India move from being a world's back office, which majorly focuses on services, to becoming the world's factory? And thank you so much. And I would end my presentation here.